This is the Tree of Life, Season 21, Chapter 7. In this episode, we will be talking about how our consumer behavior online is used to model our behavior using digital and analog structures. In this episode, we will be talking about consumer choices and how those choices are used to model our behavior and more specifically shape our perceptions. To start out, if you imagine that you are looking at a series of options on some streaming service. Initially, you have select genres or types of shows you want to watch. These options are static at first. They represent a limited exclusionary set. The other shows are merely part of the exclusion. Thus, in this rigid form, our consumer choices are rigid and represent digital structures. We look for something specific, which is unwavering. When we don't find what we are looking for, that set becomes substitutionary. It doesn't merely become substitutionary to a single object, but rather to a whole new set, which is also exclusionary. Thus, the second set replaces the first set, becoming exclusionary. The transitionary state is represented by an analog structure, the transformation of one set to another set manifesting as a single set of dialectical impulses. Now, this is quite obvious. But the key point is what that transition represents. As we explained in a much earlier podcast, digital structures become analog structures through self-consciousness with respect to some bodily rhythm or cycle, or in negation of it. Analog structures become digital structures through negation in the attention to an object. These sets don't merely represent alternatives that we see at all times. They are completely exclusionary. We don't even see the alternate sets except during the transition to analog or substitutionary impulses. Now, imagine that you could model someone's behavior from their consumer choices. The shifting from digital to analog and back again. The movement from one exclusionary set to another. Imagine that you could identify the precise moments when 1. They are distracted because their attention is fixed on themselves self-consciously. 2. They are looking at a distinct set from the exclusionary set that is actually relevant or salient. If you could do this, you could literally fool someone through a bizarre form of misdirection to see just about whatever you wanted them to see. More importantly, if you could model this processing of exclusionary sets, you could potentially impose that modeling on the subject, allowing you to shape their perceptions entirely. So how do we get there? If we imagine that this form of pivoting, which is rather similar to the pivoting between hierarchies associated with the breakdown in covariance, could be mapped out, mathematically, for any given person, and shaped through digital content on the internet, it would create a feedback loop between what they find salient and what they do not. What sets are exclusive and what sets are not. Even more significantly, we see that substitution events, described as a breakdown in covariance, is largely caused by too much rigidity in these exclusionary sets. Thus, if one possesses too much rigidity, too little movement between exclusionary sets, mediated by substitutionary impulses, then the result is a breakdown in covariance and a distinct kind of pivoting. Not between digital content moderated by those in control of the internet, but ideas, upon which hierarchies are constructed. In effect, the pivoting, described earlier, is a unique form created by too much rigidity for this modeling system to alter perceptions. The pivoting we describe in this episode, using digital representations of objects, which are completely under the control of algorithms managed by those in control of the internet, allows them to shape our perceptions by modeling our transitions between exclusive sets. The breakdown in covariance is thus a rupture between their perception, altering modeling system built using our consumer choices, and the objects we find salient, or the exclusionary sets which we are oriented to. In past episodes, we talked about how hierarchies can be oriented around specific objects. But that is not how the digital content on the internet is modeled. It is specifically modeled to be anti-hierarchical, except to the extent that narratives betray some internal hierarchy. But the consumer choices themselves are not hierarchical, they are merely sets, which are distinct, or overlapping to some degree. No set is better than any other set, they are just different. Thus the ideology of the algorithms is made manifest in the tautological representation of those sets. Thus, we can see that the modeling system uses and promulgates a tautological natural law, which defies hierarchy, internally that is. The consumer choices themselves, say on a streaming program, are presented as merely alternatives. But the hierarchy is created by those who model the transition between those exclusive sets and the information they can glean about the individual from those transitions. So long as they can keep someone pivoting between exclusive sets, which are shaped by their algorithms, they can determine what individual objects within those sets we find salient. They can essentially disappear into thin air right in front of us, merely by manipulating our own internal view of what is salient, which they model using digital data from our consumer choices. That's the end of the podcast for today.